let's try to understand what's going on with this NPC in terms of scripts a little bit more. We can ignore everything underneath the NPC for now. This has to do with the animations and also the text floating above it. We'll worry about those things separately. But the NPC itself has a couple scripts that I built that I want to talk you through. The first one is the simpler one. It's the NPC script that's responsible for having the NPC follow the player. I'm connecting the player's transform position, and I'm keeping track of some rotation values, and I'm actually going to be gathering in a vector3, the player direction, basically a position that is going to allow me to face the player. And what I want to say is I want to zero out the Y. So I don't care where the player's Y position is, because if I did care, that would mean that my animation would actually tilt like forward and backwards rather than just rotate side to side. So I want to zero out the Y. If you comment this out and try things out, actually, why don't we do this really quick? We'll see why this is going to be a problem. Let me just save this here. And we'll test this out. Now, the closer I get, or the further away I get, the player does this like tilting towards the Y value, which looks very, very odd. So let's just make sure that we actually don't have it care about the player's Y position. I'm just nullifying that data value. So now when I play again, if I get close, it doesn't tilt forward, and if I fall off, it doesn't tilt the other way. So this is what the script is doing, basically just responsible for that rotation and following the player. The more interesting script is this animation controller script. Let's pop this one open. In it, I need to gather the animator that is going to be responsible for figuring out what animation state is going on here. So what is this animator? Well, it's a component that I've attached to this object. When I go add component, I can add an animator, and in it, it allows me to connect a few things. The controller is the animation controller that we build to set the states, the thing that looks like this. Okay, so this allows us to connect that to our game object. I also need to connect the avatar. So what is the avatar? Well, it is just our whatever we want to represent as the physical body. So any one of these would do because they're all kind of the same avatar, but I'm just connecting in my praying avatar here as the visual look of this animator. I also have, now actually one thing that you might find, let me show you this really quick. If I just drag this push object in, it's going to automatically build the animator with the push avatar set as its avatar. So that kind of gets automatically built if you drag and drop an animation in. Unity connects those things for you, just to show you there really quick. And we won't worry about some of the other settings in this animator. So this should get automatically set up if you drag one of your initial kind of animation state in there. Probably the easiest way to get things up and running. Okay, let's dive back in. I also have this text element that I want to have connected here because I try to control it through my script. So I'm just going to allow my Text Mesh Pro GUI object, I'm calling text, to be connected right here. What I did was I just dragged the actual NPC text object right over here to text. I also have room for some strings, the main text and the response text. The way that I built this is that there's this text that shows initially the main text, this whole stay away, and the response text, which is this get back that stays for a little bit and then transitions back. I wanted the ability to change this really easily. No, just right here and have it automatically be processed. Nice. So I just built those connecting variables. And once this object is created, I am getting the animator component from my object and connecting it into this variable anim so that I have access to it in my script. I'm also setting this text object's text to my main text. So this, notice in my inspector view or my scene view, it says no text or new text because this hasn't been applied yet, the main text. It only gets applied when I run it. You could do this a different way. This is how I built it for now. And the key to how this works here is a trigger. I have surrounding this NPC a capsule collider that's set to be a trigger. And you can see that I've sized it in a way that kind of fits around the body nicely. You can set your own as you see fit. And if I collide with a player object, and of course my player is tagged as player, Then I trigger uh, an animation change. And this is the key to how we are working with our animation. Remember, in our animation controller, NPC controller, I had no way to transition from praying to punch. I left that in the hands of some other functionality, intentionally. That other functionality is right here. Once I trigger that the player has triggered this event, I'm going to access my animator. Remember, that animator is connected to the NPC controller. And I'm going to play an animation. This name needs to be exactly identical to the name of the animation inside of your animator controller. Notice it's called punch. If I even change just the capitalization of this and went back into my scene here, I should now see that it doesn't actually trigger because it doesn't know there's an animation called punch if the spelling is wrong. That's kind of an unfortunate thing of Unity using strings for this type of functionality, but it is what it is. We need to make sure that what we have matches up in each of those places and be careful about it. So let me change that back and that should work. So I'm triggering this animation. I could, if I wanted to, just to make sure that this works, add in this push animation, and let's set this to transition back as well. I now have some options. Now in here, instead of punch, I can just say push, and I'm going to play and trigger that animation instead. And let's see what it does when I run into it now in my game. It triggers that push animation. Beautiful. So you can see, hopefully, how these things connect. I'm going to go back to punch, though, because I have this knockback. I'm getting the rigid body from the game object that I'm colliding with. Now remember, this is on the NPC, so this is actually accessing the player, and it's adding to the player's rigid body a force that's the opposite velocity to what they're currently traveling with, and I multiply it by some factor just to make it kind of feel really impactful when that punch hits. This is how I knock the player backwards. And then I trigger this special method that I created, the animation text reverter. And what I do is I send it the name of the animation. And this is something that's just a little bit of a kind of a side strategy that I thought was kind of cool to include here. I want the ability for this to be generalized, the text reverter to work with any animation. So for example, if I, instead of punch, I did the push one, the way this is going to work is it's going to take in the animation name, and it's going to set the response text to whatever I had set it, which is no right now, and it's going to actually examine all of the animation clips attached to this animator. And I'm going to look through the whole list of them, and I'm going to see, hey, if any of those clips has the same name that I sent it, which now will be push, before I had it as punch, I want to find that animation, and I want to know a clip length of this clip that I found. So I want to know how long does that response animation take to run. And then I'm going to do this. I'm going to invoke this final method, but only have it run after that amount of time. This basically ensures that the text is set back at exactly the point where that animation ends. It's a way of synchronizing the animation length. Otherwise, I kind of have to guess what the animation length is, and it's not as adaptable. So just a bit of a clever strategy for allowing some generalization of the animation text being reverted. Thought that'd be kind of fun to see, and yeah, kind of have it up and running. And actually, I think we're pretty close to through understanding how all of this works at this point in time. We have our NPC. Make sure you watch the other video about how to get this text above the body in the game world as well. I think it's the next video I'll produce. Other than that, we have these animation controllers that we attach to the animator, and then through a script in here where we have access to this animator, we can actually trigger down here the playing of different animations. So now we have two ways of triggering animation changes, either through the script play call or through the physical links inside of our animation controller. You are now set up to create all sorts of scenarios of animation controls, including many more multi-layered, multifaceted scenarios as well.